ಈ ಸಲ ಕಪ್ ನಮ್ದೆ.
ಯಾರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು?
Thank you. Cheers, Manish.
Cheers, Wendell.
Thank you once again for agreeing to take time off and doing this. So happy to have you here. It's always an interesting conversation with you. So so thank you for being here. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, very well, thank you.
How's the lockdown? This is lockdown 2 or unlock 2 is this or whatever?
Is it 3, 4.5?
Unlock second wave, let's call it, right? Unlock
Yeah.
second wave. How are you doing? How are you doing in this? I mean, when I say how are you doing, actually in every which way, how are you doing? Physically, mentally, work-wise, how are things?
Every which way, I'm doing great, I would say, not just fine.
Okay.
Every which way.
Okay.
I think the most important point was getting habituated to whatever's happening around it. And once you get a little habituated, then you work your way around it.
In fact, for me, it feels like it's been so long since a non-COVID life. You know, we've been doing this, we've been living in a COVID scenario for how long now? More than a year and a half?
1.5 years, yes.
Year and a half. And we've gotten so used to social distancing and mask and, you know, generally not living a normal life that I've almost, it's nostalgic looking back at a time where we weren't wearing, in fact, this feels so good because I don't
Yeah.
think, you know.
I mean, 3 of us here.
Yeah.
And,
Okay, and in case anyone's watching and judging us, there's only 3 of us.
Safe
it's
distance.
It's a pretty big room.
yeah.
And there's this.
And we've got at least 1 meter distance
Correct, yeah.
between the 3 of us.
And we're all vaccinated, right?
We all at least single dose. But
Single dose.
How about you?
In your case, what second?
Single,
My
single.
single. Yeah,
So
my
far.
single. My second is I think 25th. I think I'm eligible after the 25th
Okay.
to get a vaccination. What about you?
I have actually not tracked when's my second dose because I was trying, to keep pace with those guys who are deciding whether it's 2 months, 3 months, 4 months.
Yeah.
What's the gap right now on Covishield? I have no clue.
Yeah. So what's the deal with that? So none of us is actually sure what the gap is, or we're not really sure how effective or how safe or whatever. I mean, there's really no concrete information on that.
I think they started with 6 to 8 weeks initially. The gap between
It was 4 weeks, no, 6 weeks.
Six,
it became
8 weeks.
8. Then they said 3 months.
12, then 16, and now I don't know where
I
it
think the
is at.
last I heard, I think we've all stopped keeping track. I think the last I heard, 4 months or something like that, right?
Yeah.
4 months.
But then again, to give them the benefit of doubt, it's also new, right?
Correct.
Everything is
Yeah,
evolving.
yeah,
Even the
yeah,
response to COVID in terms of, the vaccines and the pharmacological response, it's not something which has been tried before.
True.
So-
I guess it's easy to
just-
blame the powers that be.
No, there's no question of blaming, right? I mean, they're just responding to the situation like the rest of us. And they go by what the scientific evidence comes up.
Yeah.
They also have to balance it with availability and stuff like that.
It's yeah. Well, as much as
So multiple factors at play.
Yeah. It must be. I mean, these are crazy times in every which way, but it must be also crazy to be in a position of power at this point. I mean, politically speaking, it must be crazy because so much that can go wrong, so much is going wrong, and so much that you can be blamed for more than ever. Must be a scary time to be a chief minister or a prime minister or even an MLA for that matter. Must be not an easy task right now because most of the time we talk about how people are, especially the government, how the municipality or the state or center, we're so used to talking about how ineffective or how inefficient our politicians or what's the bureaucrat? No, what's the right word for it? Our what's
The government
system?
machinery,
Correct.
per se.
The government machinery, is ineffective. But I think for the most part, Definitely Karnataka, and I think it goes for most of India, barring, I think, the second wave that caught certain states. I think India has been okay, more or less, more or less. Of course, there are so many things that we can. I don't know. It's for me. I'm finding it hard to decide whether we're in a good place or we're in a bad place. Because but at the moment, as we speak, now that the second wave is past us, at the moment, I think we're in a
Had I asked you the same question in May,
no, it would be
I am
bad.
sure your answer would have been more
Absolutely.
definitive.
100%.
Right.
100%. But
So,
to be fair, even then,
I
there were
mean, May
enough.
was mayhem. Even in Bangalore, May was a disaster. I mean, it was. I don't think we have anybody in India right now who has not been personally touched
Oh, yeah.
by some loss within a close circle of family, friends, right? Every one of us has lost some.
Everybody. Yeah. May was really bad.
And May was the time when it was. I
Yeah.
mean, I remember May was like doomsday scenario in Bangalore.
Absolutely. For
I used to
everybody.
go out in the mornings for my walk, and there would be nobody. And I didn't know if it was allowed or not. But yeah, okay, I'll carry a doodh ki theli. Somebody catches me, I'll say, okay, I was going to get milk. That's allowed, right? 6 to 10.
I think 3 weeks in May were.
It was.
See, for the most part, to be fair, I won't say that I've been careless or reckless. I haven't been socializing. Honestly, I've not been socializing ever since Corona has happened. I won't say I've not been socializing at all, but I think for the most part, I think I've been responsible. But at the same time, I wasn't really. After the first 3 months, after the unlock first wave 2020 happened, I was not really that scared because it just became, after a while, it became too much. And there's so much contradictory, information online. And even socially, while on one side you had the news that said how dangerous Corona is, the first strain or the first wave that attacked the world and India, and especially India, I don't know if it was perception or reality, but it didn't seem so lethal, and it seemed like, at some level, it seemed like everybody is overreacting. In fact, I've even considering all the conspiracy theories that were going around saying the corona is a hoax and it's a conspiracy where powers, what do you call it? The Illuminati is trying to use this as an Bill Gates, who's also part of the Illuminati, and the richest 1% were trying to take over the world and using Corona as an excuse. I went about my life. In fact, I did 3-4 shoots. And shooting, when you're directing, it's a physical task. And after a point, I just removed the mask. I just said, to hell with it. And I was being quite a braveheart. And because to me, I was like, you know what, I'm not that old, and overall I'm healthy, and my immunity is good. And this is something only people who are immunocompromised should worry about and stuff. April, May changed that for me. I got really, really scared. I think somewhere in end of April, May, I genuinely felt a deep fear, and I think that's when I started taking Corona seriously. I said, man, this is not a joke, because a lot of people, friends of mine who lost both their parents, and suddenly it hits home. You're like, okay, it's not a joke,
Yeah.
people younger than me have passed away. There's a colleague who passed away, and I was like, and that guy is a non-smoker. I'm not sure if he was veg or non-veg. I don't know if it matters also, but he was definitely a non-smoker. I don't think he was a drinker, and even if he was not a heavy drinker.
No, all those myths got busted in the second wave because, I think something like this happens once in a century, right? Even though we know intellectually that viruses do mutate and evolve, just like we mutate and evolve and adapt, so do viruses. So we forgot that in the first wave. And the second wave reminded us that, listen, we are up against something which will evolve and adapt to the resistance it's facing. That's why the second wave
What are
got
your
everybody.
thoughts on how this is going to change or has changed society, the world, the future? What are your thoughts? Because sometimes I think
That's
about it,
like
and
I need a crystal ball for that, but
because I think it definitely has I think it's changed. It's not. I know maybe in a year or two from now, hopefully, I'm hoping that we look back on this as a phase we all went through, and hopefully it's not. Because some people are saying it's gonna. This is how life is gonna be for the next few years to come. You know, I'm hoping that's not the fact. But one thing is for sure: Corona and what's happened in the last year and a half, and will continue to happen over the next 6 months. Hopefully, not longer. Is or has already changed a dynamic shift in society. I would say.
Yes, it has. It has definitely, but where my personal opinion, I would say opinion, it's not that we know how it's going to pan out, but based on what we've seen and what we understand about, society and human behavior, one thing in my mind is very clear, that the new normal is not going to look anywhere close to the old normal. Even after things stabilize, let's say a year and a half, 2 years down the line, we're not going back exactly piece for piece to the old normal pre-corona. And to my mind, that two or three key areas. One is it's hastened the adoption of technology in terms of delivering work, right? So earlier it used to be, technologies existed. What we are using today has been there for the last 2 years. Okay, in some form it's been upgraded, but more or less the setup existed. But we never thought that it could lead to a situation where you can actually leverage technology to work remotely.
Right.
Even
right.
though,
Right.
we are from Bangalore, right?
Right.
We know
right.
what remote
Yeah.
working. This
yeah.
is the
I think Bangalore has
city
probably
of
been the pioneer of remote working. I'd say, in
Yes,
India at
right.
least, right? Because of
So, the
IT.
entire KPO and BPO industry, which started 15, 20 years ago, and then evolved to KPO, and, you call it all kind of fancy names, but basically what you're doing is somebody's work is being outsourced. And how is it being outsourced and delivered back? Using technology. So it's hastened, number one, it's hastened the adoption and use. So I don't think we are going to go back to 100% physical work culture that existed earlier, or 90% physical work. The second thing, which I think this comes from the area of human behavior and interaction. I don't know, you'll have to probably give me your views as well, Senthil, on this. I have the strong feeling that a lot of people have started, the pandemic has forced them to look deeply into what is more important, what really is important in life. Doesn't matter if you're 20, you're 30, you're 40, or 50. The presence of close people in your life, be they family members, be they close friends, there's been a rediscovery. That's what I'm seeing, witnessing, and in my work I talk to all kind of people.
Of course,
right?
I can imagine. Yeah.
More and more people have realized how important those relationships are, right? For overall well-being, not just physical well-being, physical health, that I don't have any infection. No, overall well-being, psychological well-being, feeling safe, feeling secure. Ironically, I'm using words like safe and secure during pandemic times, but I'm talking of psychological safety, right? Where do you feel really safe? People have rediscovered some of those aspects.
I think also
Have
family.
you? Have you?
I've see, for me it's been a very what can I say, interesting. Like, it's been a bizarre, interesting also, but bizarre experience. The whole pandemic. Uh, I think people have been affected in two ways, right? One, of course, is fear of losing or having lost, or being affected physically, health wise, by the corona virus. I think second thing has been economic impact, which has been very heavy
Huge.
on a lot of people, millions of people, literally, in our country, around the world. but really fortunate. I've been extremely fortunate this one phase of my life where I've not been heavily impacted from an economic perspective. Of course, I'm assuming that had the pandemic not happened, I'd have probably made more money than I have in the last year and a half. But
Most of
compared
us
to,
would have.
yeah, correct, yeah. No, well, there have been some people who've made more money.
Yeah, there are
Certain
pockets.
areas,
There are
certain
pockets.
areas, certain industries, certain people in specific industries have actually made more money than they in the last 1 year than they have in any 1 year period before. I've not been that fortunate, which I'm absolutely okay with. But I have had this deep sense of gratitude the last 1.5 years, because I've been economically secure. Like, I've not had to worry about the rent next month. I've not had to worry about any of my basic commitments. I've not had to worry about food. I've not had to worry about school fees. I've not had to worry about running my life.
But has this made you more sensitive to that straight of society which got
Absolutely, absolutely,
right? So,
one hundred
which was
percent.
the third point which I wanted to make.
100%. I mean, I was always, see, thing is, I've always lived, while I've always been greedy and I've always been, aspiring for more and, never happy with what I have. Better car, better bike, better clothes, club memberships, you're always looking at the things you don't have and working towards that, right? But the last few years, I've been trying to inculcate an attitude of being satisfied with what you have, because I think 40 and touching 40 and crossing 40 made me realize that there is no ceiling limit to what you can aspire for. There's no stopping point for when you say, okay, now I have enough. Because the human mentality, I think the human spirit is to always seek more, which I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. Over the last 3 years, I've been living in a state of mind where I'm trying to curb that desire for more things. The last 1.5 years has just helped push that agenda more than ever before. Because I look at people who are not, and now again things are opened up. But when things are shut down, people who really had to beg and borrow to survive, right? People who drive autos, helpers, shopkeepers, traders, small business owners, small cafe owners. So many people have, I think, gone back 5, 6 years of their lives economically, right?
Absolutely.
It'll take them 2, 3 years to recover to zero, to come back to zero, and then build from there. Um, I just, I mean, I've been so grateful in my mind, and no, I can't say that I've gone around doing great charity work or whatever.
But
But
have you taken care of certain people around you? Yes, I'm sure
whoever
you
I could,
have.
absolutely,
Right.
absolutely, whatever
So
little I could,
this is
yes.
this is something beautiful that's emerged from this pandemic in my mind, right? So we said, one was that the new normal is nowhere going to look like the old normal, right? So faster adoption of technology. So that's the one shift, first shift. Second shift I said was connecting back to what's really important in life, right? I'm not saying money is not important,
Of course.
but uh, there are other relationships, other, the bondings, the bonds, which people had kind of loosened because nobody's fault really, because you're all, exploring stuff and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
loosen those bonds. Those bonds have been rediscovered. I've seen that. I'm sure even you would have observed.
Absolutely.
And the third is, which the point which you just raised, I think you framed it beautifully. One of the things which makes me smile, if I may say, politically incorrect to smile these days, but there's beauty, you smile, right? And I found this voluntary benevolence that people have shown, right, to be a beautiful spot in this dark landscape. Almost everybody I know has been doing something or the other, small ways, need not be grand ways of launching a movement and enrolling 100 people and collecting 20 crore rupees to take care of. At an individual level, how people have treated those who are less advantaged. I think that's been an eye opener, and that's something beautiful that's emerged.
But isn't that
People are
only
watching out for others. They're more open to watching out for others.
true? But I'm just wondering, and while I do find, and I think that way social media has been really useful, because especially Facebook has been highlighting so many cases of people coming forward and helping other people at this time. And while that gives you some hope in humanity, at the same time, at the peak of the second wave, when things were really bad, I mean, people were literally not in Bangalore, touch wood. Not that Bangalore was easy. I know friends who've struggled to find beds for their family members. Um, but of course, Bombay, Delhi, Uttar Pradesh, horrific stories, right?
Yeah, that's more related to the infrastructure, Senthil. I'm talking of personal acts.
No, I'm saying at the same time, there were guys who were conning people,
They'll always
supplying remdesivir vials for $20,000.
Yeah,
And
in Bangalore, it's gone for 40,000.
Yeah, and I'm like,
I know of somebody who's actually paid 40,000.
40,000 bucks for a vial of. And my question is, yes, I get it. Of course, there's always one guy who wants to make money, right? But somehow, I mean, as reassuring as some of the positive stories that you see on Facebook of people helping people, and I have a friend who goes around, who keeps putting up these messages, about how many people they're feeding every day. While these are optimistic stories, you also read about bed scams, and people, and even 40,000 bucks for a vial is still okay. There have been cases where the person has paid 40,000 bucks and got a duplicate vial of remdesivir. And that person must have. I think only time you'll pay 40,000 bucks for a vial of anything is when it's literally a matter of life and death, right?
I know of somebody who was taken to one of the fanciest hospitals in Bangalore, critical condition, young kid, 22-year-old. And the first thing that was told to his parents was 7 days, 12 lakh, please deposit.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, so I get your point.
And the funny thing is, doctors have really been amazing. I mean, you really have to give it out, really have to give credit to the medical fraternity, the staff, that is the doctors and nurses who've, in most cases, maybe not all, but most cases, put themselves in harm's way for the sake of the people who are affected by the COVID. At the same time, it's so ironic. I could be wrong here, but I feel like the medical institutions have taken advantage of Corona and made a lot of money, which is weird because the doctors and nurses have, put their lives on the line, and they still are to an extent, and helping people in ways that really are amazing. But hospitals, so many, and I'm talking about big hospitals, non-hospitals, small hospitals, mid-level hospitals, not all, but so many cases of hospitals sending people off saying, hey, you need to put 4 to 10 to 12 lakhs. Otherwise, we can't take you in. And they said no to medical insurance, saying, no, it might be more than your medical insurance. And we don't know. So we can't. They really wanted people to deposit cash.
So you have to separate the medical delivery personnel, which is, doctors, nursing staff, and all that, from the owners and the management, who are in it for a financial return on their investments, right? So if you distinguish that, you will see that the delivery personnel, the ones who were taking care of patients, have really, really outperformed. I mean, they have stood up tall and delivered. The things which you're mentioning and which I mentioned, that somebody goes and they say 12 lakhs deposit. Those decisions are coming from ownership profit motive, right? So you can't discard the profit motive. It will all, otherwise there'll be no hospitals, and then you'll be left at the mercy of government hospitals, and we all know how those are run in India.
Yeah.
Nobody goes there. So there was a profit motive, but the people who were driving those were not, in most cases, the same people who were delivering service. The doctors, the nursing staff were delivering service. They were doing their level best. And can you imagine the amount of stress they would have been under?
You're talking about the parents,
the doctors and the nursing staff.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Right?
Okay, yeah.
At huge risk to their own health.
Of course.
they go back to their families.
Oh, yeah, they're
their
calling.
family members. They may
Yeah.
have little kids they
Yeah.
don't want to, expose to. So there's a whole lot of, we need to take a view which is more benevolent and accepting that people did their best.
No, no doubt, no doubt,
Right.
no doubt. But
That's-
but I think it's also it's a weird feeling because on one hand, as you said, I am so amazed by the kind of work that the medical fraternity has done for people, for society. And in the same breath, I'm also super pissed with a lot of reputed hospitals
Absolutely.
who have blatantly, at least in my mind, and I wish I could talk to maybe some of these hospitals where they can explain that, no, you know what, it's not so, because there's always a flip side to it, right? But from where I'm sitting and from what I'm hearing, including the story you just narrated, it feels like a lot of medical organizations,
Yeah.
have taken an advantage of the pandemic and I think have profited hugely on the loss of others. So it's a mixed feeling, On one hand, you really admire all the doctors. On the other hand, you're like wishing really ill on all these hospitals. So it's like it's crazy. But like you said, yeah, if not for these hospitals, where does one go?
Where do you go, right? Also, I think let's be a little more generous to the hospitals. Okay, enough of bashing has happened to the hospitals, rightly so. I mean, I'm not saying that they didn't behave out of step or of turn. A lot of them did. From a management perspective, which is again, I'm repeating the ownership perspective, right? Not the delivery
Right.
of service, which is
Right.
patient care,
Right.
they are also in a situation where the pressure on them, uh, the capacity available is maybe 20% of what the demand for the beds is.
Yeah.
At peak time, it was
crazy.
completely crazy. It was skewed,
It was crazy.
right? There was no capacity.
Yeah.
I personally know at least 3 people who were refused admission and died at home. Critical patients could not be taken in because there was no
Yeah.
vacancy, right?
Literally.
So, if you or I were in their place and you see that I've got 100 beds and there are 300 patients,
Yeah.
at some stage you'll have to apply some kind of a screening mechanism of who is more important, who's more critical. Do I take those in, right? So, what's the blood oxygen level, and that used to be a marker.
Right.
Or, what's the degree of infection in the lungs, that used to be another marker.
So you take the
So
worst.
you take the worst, or the other way, the absolute worst, where medically there's very little that can be done. You don't take. I mean, those are the decisions they would have been grappling with. Nobody was prepared for this, right? There's no SOP, standard instruction manual, which exists for.
How you can
So
handle
everybody was
something like
adapting, right? And when that is happening, then it becomes slightly difficult for the rest of us to figure out why they took certain decisions. Because we are not privy to a SOP manual,
this. Right.
and they don't have one. They were making it as they went.
Right. I think the rules kept changing as.
Rules kept changing. The nature of the pandemic kept changing. The intensity varied.
Right.
The infrastructure, I'm talking about support infrastructure, right? We all saw how bare it was, right? In terms of medical supplies, in terms of bed capacities, in terms of basic coordination, where to call when something goes wrong.
Yeah.
There was no clarity,
Yeah.
absolutely zero clarity. And those systems got built as we went along. So everybody, I lean towards human beings have innate goodness. I lean towards that view. There are bad apples, cannot deny that. There will always be from the time of first human being that came. I'm sure there was somebody lurking in the bushes trying to shoot them down, or to fling an arrow and run away with his apples and cows and even the woman. But bad apples have always existed. They will continue existing. You can't do anything about it.
Well, my fear, or not fear rather, it's not fear, my pessimistic feeling is that there always has been, and perhaps there always will be, more bad apples than good, in the world. I know it's a very pessimistic
No, but then
sort
the
of a viewpoint.
optimistic side of that is even if there are 100 bad apples, all it takes is one good apple
That's true. Well,
to negate 100 bad apples. So it's okay. It's fine.
you work in the field of mental health, in the sense
Yes.
you work with people. How do I describe what you do? You describe
Good
what you do better than me describing it.
So I work in the field of psychological well-being,
Right.
and mental emotional wellness.
Right. So that, I'm assuming, and I'm not trying to be mean. I'm assuming business would have boomed in this pandemic. I mean, as in in a sense, not in a commercial sense, but a sense of demand and in terms of a need. Was that crazy for you as someone who works with people in the field of
Definitely.
mental well-being?
I wouldn't say business would have zoomed because if I was looking at this as business, I would have stuck to what I used to do earlier. So I came into this area out of passion because I like doing this.
Helping people deal with
Not
their
helping.
shit.
I mean, who am I to help anybody? I can barely tie my own shoelaces. So, supporting people as they help themselves. That's the goal of any mental health profession, right? We're not here to help. Nobody can help, right? So, in terms of the number of people I work with, number of such clients, yes, that definitely showed an uptick. But in terms of revenues, no, because there's one aspect called coaching, which is more professional, work with corporates and leadership teams. And then there's therapy and mental emotional wellness, which is with individuals. They're not coming from corporate backgrounds and they're already in distress, right? So the kind of charges you use for corporate programs,
Obviously,
which is slightly different. It's not therapy or mental emotional wellness, but some of the principles are the same. It's behavior change, right? It's self-generated behavior change, behavior adaptation. So in terms of number of people I'm seeing and I have been seeing, it's definitely increased, which is kind of saddening also because it exposed the underbelly of people who are very vulnerable to big shifts in environment, right? When things are going well, most of these people were doing well,
Right.
and when something like this hits, there is a percentage of population which is more vulnerable to this impacting them in very deep ways. So it's sad in a way, but it's good to be in this field because you're there, right? You're trying to do your best, what you can.
Right.
And it also reinforces this firm belief that I have as a professional in this field. It's always fascinated me that two people of a similar background, environment, how they respond so differently to similar amounts of pressure, right? There is one bunch which is intrinsically more resilient, right?
Okay.
And there is another which caves in. So my entire approach to this arena, I'm sorry, I think we've digressed, but
No, please. We don't. In any case, we're not driving towards any point.
yeah, but we were talking of
Please feel free to
pandemic,
digress.
and we've now come to this. But
I think this is
it's,
probably a lot more interesting subject to talk about, because I think people are sick of. I think all of us, including you and I, are sick of discussing this.
So, my firm belief of working in this area has been from day one. I started in this maybe around 5 years ago.
Let me just, before you go into this, I just want to ask you one question. What made you get into this field of how would I describe
Mental emotional wellness,
mental
psychological well-being,
mental emotional wellness?
wellness.
Yes. How what drew you and what got you into this? How did you get into this? How did you get here?
How did I get here? Okay, interesting.
Yeah, because this is not what you were doing. I know that. I know for a fact that you were in the corporate line of work
Yeah,
for
I
the
was a
longest time.
typical corporate rat in a
Correct.
gilded cage.
Correct.
Yeah, I escaped from there at the right time. I would say that, people performing to their potential, we all have potential. You have potential. I have potential. He has potential. Those watching, they have potential, right? People performing to their potential. Does it make you smile, Senthil? Does
People
it?
performing to their potential, does it make me smile? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Simple answer.
Right.
That's what got me.
But what made you believe that? And I'm just asking out of curiosity that you could, like, how did you decide one day that you could, you're gonna go and get
No,
into the
it
field?
wasn't one day. I think it was I first, dipped my toes into one particular area, spent a lot of months learning those skills, upskilling myself. And as I went deeper, I said this, it just clicked. I said, this is great because here you're working with people who can now perform more to their potential, right? So any hindrance which comes in the way of potential being fully blossoming, uh, I as a professional, my focus is on removing those hindrances for clients, right? Actually, the clients themselves remove it, but with the support of a professional, right? And once I started working in this area, it became more and more clear to me that it's something which gives you a lot of joy when you do that. That's why I asked you, when you see somebody performing to their highest potential, does it make you smile?
Absolutely,
Right.
absolutely.
And that's the core reason. And so I went in, and then I skilled myself in various subfields, and finally I realized one thing which drives me very strongly in this field. It may come as a shock to a lot of people who work in this field. You will never, you've known me for a while.
Yeah,
Have you ever heard me use terms? And possibly this is the first time I'm using those terms. But just to make a distinguish between the two. I will never talk of mental illness.
right, right. Okay,
I will never talk of mental health problems,
okay,
right?
okay,
Because people have been doing that for centuries,
okay,
right? Now, instead of talking about illness and problems, can we look at what makes a person flourish, right?
okay.
What makes a person flourish, Senthil? Tell me some qualities which make a person flourish. Flourish in their own ways. We're not talking
whatever
any.
they're doing, flourish in
Yes.
whatever their goals or ambitions are.
Yeah. So, what are the qualities which make a person flourish?
I think the fundamental quality would be self belief. I think that's important,
Self belief.
right? I think knowledge in what the field that they're involved in.
Yeah. No, you're looking at it professionally. I'm
Correct.
saying flourishing as a person, right? We're not saying only flourishing as a professional, earns so much, stays here. No, flourishing as a person who's always calm, composed, who deals with life, whatever slings and arrows comes his or her way. I'm talking about those people,
Right.
right?
Right.
What makes them flourish? What are the values? What are the qualities?
I would say, if I had to give you an answer,
Speak from the heart. Don't give me pat answers.
that's what I'm thinking. What makes a person flourish? I think having joy. I mean it's
Joy.
difficult for me.
No,
I mean,
it's
because
perfect
because
word.
I'm one of those guys who
Perfect word.
easily sees the glass is half full, half empty. I think joy is important.
What else?
I think a balance. As in, when I say
Perfect.
balance, I mean mental balance.
Yeah, emotional balance.
Emotional
The ability
balance.
to come back to center point
Correct.
quickly,
Quickly.
right? Recovery time is faster for these people.
Right.
It's not that they're
Right.
not hurled into the bias once in a while,
Right.
but they recover very fast.
Right.
Right. So
Right.
recovery time, balance,
Uh,
joy. What else?
I think number three would be something that I still struggle at, but have gotten a little better with time. I suppose sense of gratitude, I suppose, for what you have,
Perfect.
focusing on what you have instead of
Lovely.
not focusing on what you don't have. What else? What else?
So sense of gratitude,
Yes,
joy,
yes,
balance,
yes.
faster recovery
Right.
from adversities, resilience.
Resilience. That's a very good word. Yeah, yeah, that's
Perfect.
important. Yeah, yeah,
So if you mix up all these, do we also get a certain sense of, you said balance, right?
yeah.
And I added recovery,
Mm-hmm.
faster recovery.
Mm-hmm.
Equanimity, these people are more calmer. Would that,
Yeah, yeah,
is
absolutely.
that a value you see in them? When you're around such people, do you feel safer and securer?
Absolutely. I think very few such people, but yeah, when you are around such individuals who have, I think, calmness. Absolutely, I think calm is the identifying factor. Being able to weather the storm
Perfect.
with a sense of what
How
do
are
I
you
say?
feeling right now? How are you feeling, Senthil?
How am I feeling? Like I said, good. I'm actually in a position where I can have this conversation with you and have camera rolling.
So last
Having
5 minutes we were talking about calmness, joy, resilience, equanimity, capability to bounce back faster, right? Makes you a little lighter. Does that make you feel a little lighter?
if you could, but what would
Now instead, now let me switch.
sure?
Let's talk of depression
Yeah,
and how sad it can be. I'm not trying to be flippant here. I'm being serious. Let's talk of psychosis. People, delusions, hallucinations. Let's talk of bipolar. Let's talk of anxiety. Let's talk of panic. I see your body language has changed.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
has
yeah,
mine.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Why?
I mean, these are, I mean, not nice things. I mean, these are not um, good experiences. These are not.
Perfect. So now, coming back to what drives me, right? I approach my work from the first lens. And I believe everybody has the potential for all those. So when I use the word potential, I wasn't meaning it in a, potential to make tons of money and buy a Lamborghini and house. That's important for some people. It's an individual goal.
Right.
But I'm looking at potential from these aspects. All of us, every single human being has the potential to flourish on these parameters. But based on certain life experiences, environmental variables, could also be partly genetic, partly. I'm not a believer in genes are destiny at all because epigenetics has changed that. Uh, because of certain of those variables, certain hindrances fall into place, which prevent some of these qualities and values which we just spoke. Right, five. You can. I don't think you'll ever remember forget those five.
Which
Will you?
five? The five qualities?
Five qualities of flourishing.
No, no, I suppose not. Because
They are etched in your mind now.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Because of certain experiences, environment, part genetics, biology, developmental experiences early on in the childhood, certain hindrances or screens fall into place which prevent the full blossoming of these qualities in certain individuals under certain situations. Right. When I approach my work, when I approach the clients, and which is why you'll never hear me using the word patient ever, just like you won't hear mental health problems or illness from me, except for this conversation here,
Right.
where I was trying to make a point.
Right.
My approach is that since all of us have that capacity to flourish, why don't I approach my profession and the clients from this lens that we are working together so that you can actually flourish on those qualities rather than focusing on what's wrong and then working on avoiding it. I think it makes much more sense for a mental health professional, any profession, to look at what's the ideal state that can be attained. What do you want to approach? So my way is an approach orientation, not a avoidance orientation, because an avoidance orientation will rarely deliver the same results as an approach orientation.
You're saying
Would
instead
you
of-
want to be happy, or would you want to be less unhappy?
Right.
I would go for the former any day,
Right.
as would 90% of the people.
Right.
But if you're thinking that, okay, I want to be, less unhappy, you're still
But is
thinking
that
of
how
unhappiness.
is that how people generally approach life? I know I do sometimes. Sometimes there are days when all you want to do is be less unhappy. Because
That's fine.
somewhere deep inside you believe that
We're not talking of a utopian world. We're just talking of a goal worth having, right? Working towards this goal where the orientation is more approach rather than avoidance.
Let me ask you from your experience, because you've been doing this for how long now? You've been in the field of
5 years.
mental wellness for 5 years.
5 years.
Random question. In society, how many people are actually really sad? I mean, out of 10 people, or depressed, or sad, or going through some kind of mental turmoil that is more than that's critical. In the sense, all of us are going through some mental turmoil. All of us are at some level sad about something. I'm
See,
sure about that.
sadness and feeling the blues, everybody goes through that.
Correct. But how
You
many
de-
people?
So, as a professional, you distinguish what is clinical depression.
Correct.
There are markers for that, right?
I think I'm saying not just depression. At least still is a big word. I'm saying how many people are messed up out of 10 people. in
What do you mean
society.
messed up?
Messed up is where people don't realize that I see a lot of people pretending to be all right. They're not all right.
See, I don't want to get into a discussion of general not all right, general sadness. Those are very subjective.
What I'm
From
saying
a-
is,
from a medical perspective, from a psychology, psychiatric, mental wellness perspective, I'll give you some figures, okay? And these are figures which are from science journals, from research studies. At any given point of time, there would be between 25 to 30% of people facing a challenge.
No, we're all facing challenges.
I'm not saying facing a challenge in the regular world.
Right.
Right. I'm
You're talking about extreme duress.
I'm loath to use certain terms which I just used.
Hyperbolic.
Yeah. So I'm saying they're facing a challenge which is clinical.
Clinical. Okay.
Right.
Right.
At any point of time between 25 to 30%. And that 25 to 30% would be split. Challenges around, mood and emotions. Challenges around cognitive abilities, situations which impact cognitive abilities. Challenges around personality confusions, right? So you have people use terms very loosely, borderline personality, multiple personality, split personality. But clinically, very precise markers exist. So if you look at those kind of severe challenges which people face at any given point of time, right now there's 7 billion people on Earth. Out of that, maybe 5 billion or 4.5 billion are adults. I would say 1/4 of that at any given point of time
That is no. You're right. I'm sure that
are
medically-
facing severe challenges.
Right. But these are medically induced. Is it hormonal? It's genetic. It's whatever.
Like I
right?
told you, it could be part genetic, part developmental, part genetic. It's not always one gene.
Right.
It's always gene.
Right. Right.
Part developmental, which is early childhood, part environmental as you're growing, part situational, which triggers all the first three, right? So the reasons are always multiple and they're attributed to those four areas.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll be a little more specific on what I'm curious to know. I spent most of my 30s, right, in severe duress,
Right.
mental duress, which came from personal issues, which came
Right.
from professional challenges.
Right.
It was a very scary time. I'd say
I can
most of my
imagine.
30s, very difficult, challenging times. Um, but at the time, now I can say this looking back on my own life. But at the time, if you ask me how you're doing, yeah,
seemed like
things are difficult. But yeah, I'm okay. Things are difficult. Yeah, but because I was always been. While I've had my own issues with depression, I've had a very positive, optimistic attitude. Uh, I'm someone who believes that if you want something, the only way to get it is to go after it, right? So I've never really held myself back. So I would, and I think in my head also I thought I was all right, but looking back I was not, and that was leading me to indulge in a lot of self-destructive thinking, self-destructive action, which when I look back now seems so silly. I'm like, why would I do that? Or why would I behave like that? Or why would I think like that? Or
but
why
that's
would
only in
I
hindsight.
approach life like that? Exactly.
That's only in hindsight.
Only in
When
hindsight.
you were going through that,
Yeah.
that seemed the only response that you were capable of.
Yeah, and I couldn't even think about what I was doing at the time as I was living my life because it seemed normal. Like if I had to live that phase of my life again, I'd probably not behave or forget behave. I'd not think. I probably wouldn't. Yeah, live the life I lived in my 30s the way I did because I know better now. But
You know better now, right?
yeah,
And the way you approach things is different.
I'd like to believe so.
There are more phases when you feel more resilient, joyful, compared to that phase.
I just have a better handle on life now. I'd say.
Perfect.
Not that I'm. I can't say that I'm leading a perfect life. Still, so
Nobody
many.
is. Show me one person who says he or she is leading a perfect life, and I'll show you a lie.
True.
But imperfect life doesn't mean health challenges or wellness challenges, right? Those are regular struggles in life. But then what you've just described, you are going through a severe challenge in that phase of life, Simple, right? And then you're sitting here now, a different kind of person.
Yeah, better.
Yes.
Different from what I was in my 30s for sure. Absolutely.
Because the qualities which you're using now, right, the qualities of flourishing, they were available back then also, but it's like I told you, certain hindrances, they act like a screen. You're not unable to access those qualities which you can freely access now, relatively speaking.
Right. Right.
Right?
Right. Right.
So this is exactly what I was trying to tell you. My approach has been, had you come to me then when you're
Right,
going
right,
through
right,
troubles, my approach would have been to look at you and also get you to look at yourself more from a angle of what's your real potential. We're not supposed to exhibit it. I'm not saying exhibit your potential now,
Right.
but do you have some potential to flourish? Then you figure out what are the hindrances which are making you resistant to accessing those
Right.
qualities, right?
To be even more, what can I say? For the benefit of anyone watching or listening to this, what I'm really trying to ask you is, at what point, like you are a professional who works in the mental wellness, well-being, or emotional well-being space, right? And we've had a few sessions. I've been working with you a little bit the last. Just so that people are aware, that's how I met you, right?
Yes.
I mean, I met you randomly, but we've been doing some sessions, and it's really benefited me, even in this phase of life where I am so much better than I was in my 30s, and I think I worked with you. I did these sessions with you purely because today I'm in a space where I'm curious, about how do I get better. I'm in a space of life where I want genuinely, consciously want to improve myself mentally, and also I can afford it to an extent. I mean, no, I'm not saying you're exorbitant or mental health is, but of course it does cost money. I'm not saying you specifically. In any endeavor where you improve yourself costs money, right? Today I have the benefit of thought and finances, right?
And there's a third benefit.
Which is
Compared to now, 10 years ago, I think the stigma associated
With
of
seeking mental health.
seeking help
Right.
was much higher back then. It
Correct.
still exists today,
But
but
not as
it's
much. Not
lesser
as much.
than.
So my question is, at what point does someone decide, hey, man, maybe I need help? At what point does someone decide, or does everyone need mental health? I mean, I think everyone, all of us do. But at what
See,
point do I seek professional guidance from someone like you to improve my life?
okay. So all of us go through phases where we need some support, right? It could be informal, through friends, family. That's different. That's regular life, right? But when to approach a professional and seek an intervention is when a large part of your life you start feeling dysfunctional. The things which you used to do so easily earlier, now you feel dysfunctional doing that,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
right?
absolutely. Absolutely.
You start noticing changes in physiology. Okay, when it starts impacting your physiology, which means physical health, and in severe cases, that will mostly happen. There will be impact on diet patterns. There will be impact on sleep patterns. There will be impact, something called we call anhedonia, which is uh, the things which we used to enjoy, we suddenly stop enjoying those things. That's anhedonia. That's a very, very strong sign that something's wrong. You need to take an intervention and go back and access to your state of flourishing, right? You need professional help at that point. So, dysfunctionality of day to day operations, your relationships, work, your lifestyle, if it's gone suddenly gone a 180 shift, that's a very, very key sign. But Sentinel, what happens is, different kind of challenges, cognitive, emotional, mood related, personality related, they have different markers. So what I'm trying to tell you right now is an overall umbrella. But as a professional, I would look for different markers for different challenges.
I just think that
Overall, dysfunctionality of day to day, anhedonia, very strong, disrupted patterns of relationships, your relationship even to your work, your relationship to things which you used to enjoy, your hobbies, what you used to enjoy, suddenly those dropping away, those would be some of the first things which we look for.
I think a lot of I meet a lot of people, and I think all of us are a little messed up one way or another for whatever reasons, right?
Who decides what's normal? Right?
I just feel, having experienced a little bit of counseling with you, and I've tried this before with other people. I mean, not other people, not too many other people. I think one other person. Um, I would encourage more people to seek uh, professional counseling, um, because it makes a difference. And I think a lot of people are messed up and they don't realize that they are messed up. I mean, I was one of those people, which is probably why you eat more than you should. It's probably why you
You
drink more
either
than you
eat
should.
more or eat less.
Eat less.
You
Right?
drink more,
You
less
can't
is
drink
good,
less.
but or you do something else which is less,
and
right? So
and
sleep pattern disrupted.
sleep patterns.
Either you're sleeping more than what you were, or you're sleeping much less.
Yeah,
Those
yeah.
are giveaway
I think
signs.
general health. I see a lot of people who are constantly unwell. And sometimes I wonder if the illness is in the mind or in the body, because they constantly have a cycle of illness. And I just wish I could tell those people, say, I'm not a mental or emotional well-being expert. And sometimes you don't like people dissing your problems. When you tell me that, what, I have these problems, sometimes people get offended when they say, no, I think it's all in your head. You don't really have a problem. You know what I'm saying? People get very upset. And I would say that from a personal perspective, where I went through a phase of life where I really thought my life was bad, that everything I had was just not good enough, that I was unlucky, that I've been what do I say? I've been a victim of misfortune, and, this whole thing of why me. And as a result of that, you do a whole bunch. Anger was one of my biggest problems. Anger that is expressed to people, fights and aggression, and anger within, where you can't sleep properly, where there's really no moment of peace, and there's no real joy in life. You are momentarily happy by something, but that moment passes so fast that you come back to a space where you know that you don't know what it is, but you're not happy. You go to bed not happy, you wake up not happy. I've been through that phase. And I suspect a lot of people go through that life and accept it as life. I did for a good decade or more than a decade, where you think it's okay to uh, not be happy. I don't think so today. I think that has to do with age, and that also has to do with the fact that I've had help now a couple of times over the years. And the reason I'm talking about this with you now is because hey, you're an expert, and
Not an
no,
expert.
you're not an expert. You're a professional in this line of work, and I think a lot of people need it. I think a lot of people need professional help, not because they're mad, but because, like you said, they can be.
They can be blossoming much better, right? They can be flourishing much better. We can all, even I can. But I'm not talking of a general gap between desired flourishing and current flourishing. I'm talking of huge gaps, right? Which open up when somebody is going through a severe challenge, right? The gaps really widen. Performance dips, relationships dip, health dips, general joy of things which used to give us happiness, that dips. So all around, from everywhere, you're getting pummeled, right? That's the time to seek help. And fortunately, I think I can say from personal experience, more and more people are reaching out.
I think so. I think the
I've seen
stigmas.
that.
I can imagine.
And they're very open about it. And
What kind of people come to you more? Like from kind of people who come to you for help. What is there any particular kind of people that you see are more? I mean, the kind of people that come to you. I'm sure all kind of people come to you for help. Is there any like more women come to you for help, or more people in their 30s come to you for help, or do you see that more men with divorces come to you for help? Like, is there a stereotype of the maximum number of people that approach you right now?
no
Just
stereo-
curious.
No stereotype.
No stereotype. Okay, all kinds of people.
All kinds of people.
It's not like any one kind of person comes to you more than others.
Uh, some of my clients are 18,
Okay, 18-year-olds. Okay,
18-year-olds.
but does an 18-year-old? Okay, I suppose 18-year-olds, especially, I suppose.
And some are as old as 65.
Okay,
Some are men, some are women.
okay,
Some are financially very well off, some not so well off. There's no stereotypes in them.
okay.
Maybe at a very large meta-analysis level, they may emerge pockets, but I'm not interested in those.
But there's no real single common factor that.
I wouldn't want to stereotype anything of
Right.
that sort,
Right.
right? Because I, in my experience, haven't seen any such pattern.
There's no such
That
pattern.
more men or more women, no equal number. I see, more kids or more middle-aged or more older. No, I have a mix of all.
The pandemic has caused a huge economic downturn.
Yes.
But at the same time, the number of people who've clients,
Yes.
has it gone up or has it come down?
It's gone up.
It's gone up.
It's gone up. I told you right in the beginning, right?
Right.
It's
right,
gone up.
right. I feel that one of the reasons that more people are able to seek professional help from people like you is because the earning capacity of the average Indian has gone up, especially the middle and upper middle class had gone up over the last decade.
That's one.
And plus, they don't mind spending money on this. They don't see it as a waste.
They see it as an investment in their own well-being.
Correct. An improvement, an investment, right?
So there's more awareness. There's more, financial affordability.
Right.
There's less stigma, and there is. I think the last point is a softer point.
So isn't that contradictory that while people, I mean, it's interesting, of course, I get it. People are, I guess, more anxious and more, what do I say, worried about their immediate future than ever before. It's interesting to me that the earning, no, but I guess the people who do come to you for help, I suppose they're not the ones who are financially messed up in this time, or is that
No, they are also there. But I'm saying, I'm not just looking at pandemic wise. I'm saying overall, the general, incomes have been increasing.
okay?
So in the pandemic, it's gone down for a lot of them, and I see a lot of those who come to me. But overall, there is more uh, material prosperity, right? If you take a 10-year window, forget just a 1.5 year window. In this 1.5 years, there's been a dip, but
Okay.
still, people have the money to afford such interventions. And like I told you, I mean, we don't charge too much, right? We make our money elsewhere, which is on corporate work.
Right.
That's where the real.
Right. Right.
This is more of joy and passion, a genuine desire to see people do better than they're doing.
And how often do you always see people, like, how much success do you enjoy um, in your interactions? Like, does everybody you work with uh, do better, or do some not get better, or do some remain the same, or do all of them? I'm not asking this some kind of promotion for you. I'm just
No.
curious
It's not about
because people are
promotion.
complex.
No. If I
And
were to say everybody is benefited, I would be a liar.
right.
No mental health professional can ever say that. Not because of competency shortage or lacking of competency, but please understand, at the end of the day, Senthil, it's a human being talking to a human being, right? And when two human beings are talking and working so closely in a relationship which is established in trust, correct? That's the first thing that I'm looking to offer to a client, right? And that's possibly the first thing that the client is also looking for, a safe place, a trusted place where conversations, it's safe to have any kind of conversation, right? So when you're talking of that level of human interaction, it's a very intimate level of human interaction, right? Even though it's professional, but in terms of the areas you explore, there's a lot of intimacy on the
Oh, yeah.
areas which you explore.
Of course.
You won't be talking about some of those areas even to your friends.
Very true. There is some. I think this is one point I'd like to highlight. Why, like, a lot of people, when I talk to them about, I encourage people now to seek professional help, if anybody for that matter. But still some people think, no, no, I don't think I need it, and I'm okay, and maybe they don't. I think the reason people need professional counseling, almost everyone, is because there are certain things you're not even comfortable sharing with your friends, right? And more importantly, I don't know if everybody has friends who are smart enough to tell you what to do in those really important times. Because I know people who have shittiest friends, they are the dumbest people as friends, right? And when you share a real serious problem with someone stupid, you're gonna get a stupid suggestion, right? You're gonna get a stupid answer or a solution, right?
If you've noticed, a therapist, mental health professional will rarely give you suggestions,
Correct, correct.
because I'm not here to give you prescribed solutions to your challenges. That's not my job. My premise is that anybody who walks in has the capacity, innate potential to overcome what they're going through. That's the premise I'm approaching this entire thing from. Where's the question of me helping them then? Right? So, for instance, when you started working with me, my premise was Senthil has the resources within him to deal with whatever challenges he's facing,
Right.
right? And the only conversations we've had, the work that we've done, the techniques and process work has been around removing the obstacles which were preventing you from accessing those resources.
Right.
Sometimes I may have suggested, Senthil, why don't you try this? and see how it does it work or not. But more often than not, you were telling me, okay, yeah, I could do this, and then I will encourage you, right?
Right. Right.
Now, this kind of conversation needs trust,
Absolutely.
faith, complete
Yeah.
confidentiality,
Yeah.
and it needs a certain amount of interpersonal chemistry. Agreed?
Of course.
Right? When I say interpersonal chemistry, I'm not talking about a personal private affair. I'm talking of some kind of chemistry between the therapist and the client. This may not be available in every situation. So sometimes a client chooses a therapist who doesn't work well with that client's style of thinking, working. So failures are a part of this profession. But luckily, I would say, since you've asked me, I was just trying to think, okay, out of hundreds of people that I've worked with, I don't know how many hours I've spent doing this. Two come to my mind where I know that nothing happened.
Okay. Okay. But you were not able to really help
Move
them
them
help
forward.
themselves. Okay.
I wasn't able to support them in moving the needle.
Right.
Uh, but that's all right. Okay, I don't. It would be unethical of me to continue that relationship
If when you see there's no
when I
progress.
see there's no progress. Okay,
Right. Right.
then it's my professional ethical duty to
Right.
point them to a direction where they can try and see if it works.
Right.
There's nothing personal. I'm not taking it on my ego.
Right.
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 My job is to make people move forward.
Right.
It's not a
Say. You
Yeah.
finish. Yeah.
So, a couple of cases is all I can remember. In almost every other instance, I've never had in my life, other than those two cases where the client didn't say they wanted to leave, I advised them to seek more.
Right. Right.
Fortunately, touch wood, I've never had a single case where a client has said, no, I want to work with you.
Anyway, as Bhavesh has pointed out, we're running out of card space or whatever. But more importantly, I think I've already taken a lot of your time. So to conclude, I just wanted to ask you, as a professional in the mental health and emotional well-being space,
Mental and emotional wellness.
so the mental and emotional wellness, any tips or just general advice on how people can lead more fulfilling lives where they can live to their fullest potential without needing professional help, or I mean maybe they do, but any general steps or any gentle advice that you could give?
See, I mean, like I told you, I can barely tie my own shoelaces. So who am I to give anybody any advice? But there are a few things which always help. Okay. And this is not from books and academics. This from personal observation. In yoga you call swadhyaya, which is self-study, self-observation. Also observing people who I have worked with, irrespective of what you're going through, the degree of wellness, irrespective of that. But 5 or 6 things which are important. And it doesn't mean that, only if you're facing a challenge do you do these 5 or 6 things. These will help everybody, right? They've helped me, they've helped you, they've helped Bhavesh. If I name those, you'll say, I know, yeah. So it's like one of those grandma's nuksas, right? And old wisdom is always powerful.
You think you can tell us the
Five.
5 things in 2 minutes?
Under 2 minutes.
Come on.
Number one, physical exercise. I'm not talking of lifting weights, I'm talking of keeping the body active.
Right. Okay.
There are specific biological correlates to why physical exercise also affects your mental emotional wellness.
Absolutely.
Number one, right?
Right.
Number two, sunlight.
Sunlight. Okay.
Okay. Again, precise neuroscientific correlates pertaining to certain portions of your brain. Direct correlation. Sunlight is a mood elevator.
Sunlight. Perfect.
Sunlight. Third, when you're faced with a situation where you're unable to achieve something which you want, right? Try areas where you can score small wins which are directly attributable to you.
Okay.
Small wins, but they are directly attributable to you.
Okay.
this gives you more self belief.
Right.
And then you move
Right.
forward and take on bigger things.
It's like the 1% rule. Don't aim for 100 because you'll fail.
Yeah. Sometimes, it happens that I've taken on something, a challenge which was very big, and I couldn't achieve it, and it pushes me back.
Right.
I lose self confidence.
Instead, focus on the one step that you can move ahead.
Yeah. So when you're faced in that situation where you've been thrown back and off track because of a big adverse event,
Right.
the way back, even without any support, is start taking up smaller achievable goals where the success can be directly attributed.
Right.
This powers up your self belief and self confidence.
Right. Right.
How many I told you? Four?
Three.
Fourth, very important, gratitude you mentioned, right?
Right.
It's time to look for what really is well in your life and be grateful. And the moment you start thinking about that, you suddenly drop a huge list. What are you grateful
I
for?
think we could speak just 1 hour on the aspect of gratitude, but I completely buy your point.
So that's fourth.
Fourth.
And the fifth is, if you are unable to help yourself, don't obsess. Go help others.
Okay.
Very, very, very powerful transformative tool. Doing something for others, even in small ways, will release certain neurotransmitters and hormones in your body, which will drive you towards wellness. Because you're in that state, Senthil, where you're focusing, how can I improve myself? How can I help myself? And you're not able to, right? And then you sit back and say, it's not worth it, man. What's life? This. That's the wrong approach, because if you've tried and tried and tried and failed and you're trying again, that's stupidity. Change the focus, make it other focus. Trust me, 100 out of 100 cases, if you are trying to do something for somebody else, it will elevate you and give you that power to then do something for yourself.
So would you
That's
say that
five.
number 5 is probably, of the 5 we've listed, probably the most important, in a sense?
All are equally important,
Equally
depending on person to person. If somebody's tried 3, then I would say, has it worked? No. Okay, then try these 2.
Right.
So these are general points. This is nothing to do with.
As basic and general as what you've mentioned, I think most of us don't process these 5 things as a fundamental building blocks to achieving a better emotional, mental, and physical wellness.
And these are not subjective. Okay.
They're definitive.
These have scientific, neuroscientific, endocrine, biological correlates. I'm repeating. So it's very, very precise.
Nice.
And we can't talk of science here, but trust me, if you go and do your reading, I can name certain references, articles, scientific articles. A lot of doctors are working in this area. A lot of professionals in some of the best labs in the world are working in this area. They know what they're talking of.
Thank you so much. I think it's been a very helpful session. And I think the last 2 minutes, I think, sums it up. But it's been a great session, an interesting conversation as always, chatting with you. Thank you so much. I hope our conversation has benefited someone. I hope someone watches this, and I hope they benefited or at least entertained or whatever. I don't. Thank you so much for giving
Thank you, sir.
us your time.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhavesh.
Thank you, Bhavesh. Thank you. Thank you so much.